Okay, we have damning new details coming out about the Trump assassination shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania. We've got people calling for the head of Secret Service to step down. People looking into Alejandro Mayorkas. What went wrong? To go through all of this, I have security expert Charles Marino with me. Charles, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, good to be with you, Stephen.
So I know you're doing 25 hits a day. This topic is insane. And every hour, more damning details come out. Let me just give a background on you, and then I want to jump right into this. Chuck, you go by Chuck, is a national security expert, writer, and author. You were also a supervisory special agent within the United States Secret Service, and you are a global security expert. Saturday, you're probably going about your day just as I was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, my phone starts blowing up. President Trump has been shot. They don't tell me whether he's dead, the extent of it. I get on Twitter and start looking, and I'm just horrified. What was your initial reaction to this major story?
Well, I got to tell you, I was in my office late Saturday morning into early afternoon, doing some news hits like I normally do, and had just left. Jumped in my car, was driving home, and received a phone call saying, "Hey, turn around and get back to your office right away." And then proceeded to work for the next 24 hours straight overnight, and talking to international news channels and of course US news channels, and trying to digest and get the information that I needed to provide an early on analysis of what was going on and how this happened. Yeah, look, I mean, the Secret Service trains for a wide variety of scenarios, and including the worst case scenario, an attempted assassination, which is what we saw here. What caused it is a catastrophic failure of the overall security plan that was created and put in place. And for that, the Secret Service owns this. They take the hit on it, not the state and local police, the Secret Service. The Secret Service has the statutory responsibility to protect the former president of the United States and others. The Secret Service has the responsibility of creating and effectively implementing, that last part is key, effectively implementing that security plan that they've created. And the Secret Service, finally, is the agency that requests the resources from state and local law enforcement. No different than what we do around the world. The Secret Service cannot do its job without the support of state and local authorities.
Yeah. So you're saying catastrophic failure. One thing that I wanted to bring up, and I wish I had an image here, but they're basically calling it the Pac-Man diagram, where it looks like Pac-Man in reverse, right? Where essentially it's a circle, a radius of where the Secret Service is responsible. And the very building where Thomas Matthew Crooks fires the shots from, there's a pie wedge missing that they handed over to the local police. I'm now reading this morning that the police literally had basically headquarters set up there for security. The murderer, the assassin, is on top of the roof of the very nest of the people supposed to protect the president. What do you know about, is this a miscommunication between local and Secret Service, even though at the end of the day, Secret Service is responsible for the president?
When you have a significant catastrophic failure like we saw in the overall plan, the first thing it does is it exposes other systemic failures. And I can guarantee you right now, right after the roof not being posted, we're going to see that there was a communications fail, which again should not happen. There's redundancies here for this. But as far as what you're talking about and what the Secret Service actually owns, let me crush some myths here. And some of these myths, by the way, have been perpetuated by the director of the Secret Service, which is why I'm calling for her immediate resignation.
This is
Because
Kimberley Cheadle.
this is Kim Cheadle.
Okay.
Because some of the statements that she has made publicly are either contradictory, they fly in the face of common sense, or they undercut the proven methodologies, protective methodologies of the Secret Service. So, with that said, here's how security works, and the Secret Service is responsible for all that I'm going to describe right now. There are 3 concentric rings of security. There's the inner perimeter, where the immediate president's shift works. Those were the ones that responded heroically to the shots being fired and threw their bodies on his. You had the counter sniper team, which was right above on the roof, right behind where he was speaking. You have the counter assault team, and you have some immediate Secret Service personnel along the buffer line. The middle ring of security is where the uniform division of the Secret Service works with state and local law enforcement, and the Secret Service oversees the screening operations. That is the operation of the magnetometers that are checking everybody for weapons and other prohibited items as they're coming into the venue. And then there is the outer perimeter, in which this building fell 130 yards out approximately, with direct line of sight to the stage. That is where state and local law enforcement, again, which has been requested by the Secret Service, is posted up and assigned to mitigate threats that have been identified in the advance process when Secret Service goes out and does what's called a walkthrough of this venue to identify these threats and put plans in place to mitigate them. It remains consistent that the Secret Service stays engaged throughout regarding what those assignments are and to make sure they're carried out. So if that roof in that building were agreed upon by the Secret Service and local police to be secured so that nobody could gain access to that roof, it is incumbent on the Secret Service to make sure that that happens. If that doesn't happen, and let's say for some wild reason the police department says, you know what, we're not doing that. We don't agree to do that. It's too hot that day. Then the Secret Service has to mitigate it another way, even if that means putting one of their own on that roof, or another agency on that roof. What cannot happen is what happened. That these responsibilities are just given to the state and local police, and they are relied upon to just go ahead and do it. Now, there are a number of ways that could have been verified. You could have had agents that were checking on all of these locations, especially a critical building like that presented a clear danger and threat to the protectee. You could have verified it through the counter sniper team, since they likely knew that it was a concerning building based on where it was located, to say, hey, can you check and make sure that that roof in fact has somebody on top of it? And if they don't, the counter sniper team should say, look, we got a problem here. Get somebody on that roof right away. We don't care who it is.
Okay. So Kim Cheadle is the head of Secret Service. She is being called on by many, many people to step down, including yourself as an expert. Why do you think she's not stepping down? Would that be an admission of guilt? Does that put her at a disadvantage of controlling the narrative? Why wouldn't she step down with the protectee being hit in a failed assassination attempt?
Well, let me go over some of the problems that are caused because she's not stepping down and trying to protect her position. First of all, the Secret Service needs to be the focus of this, not an individual trying to save their job. The agency needs to come out stronger for this. So for it to be made about an individual that's trying to save her job and potentially willing to burn the entire house down while she's doing it is not good for the agency, and she should recognize that. The other thing that's not healthy is to point the finger, as she initially did, at state and local law enforcement, considering how reliant the U.S. Secret Service is on the support of state and local law enforcement. You're talking about damaging relationships that have extended decades between the agencies. People are friends and we rely on one another. So, for example, the Secret Service cannot conduct motorcades without the support of state and local law enforcement. They lead the motorcade, they shut down the roads, they provide locations for us to go to in the form of their headquarters buildings and their precincts to work out of. So there's a lot of damage that can come here. And then you have the support they give us at sites like the rally that took place in Pennsylvania. You know, if they don't show up, we can't do the job. They're just looking for instruction. So it's time for her to step down. And look, if the investigation, which I think it will, leads to the fact that the Department of Homeland Security has also not been giving the agency the resources and support that they need, then the Secretary of Homeland Security needs to go to. I mean, the Secretary of Homeland Security, in all reality, shouldn't even be in the position as we speak today, based on what he's done with this border crisis. It seems like everything he's in charge of at the Department of Homeland Security is failing bad, and people are getting hurt, whether we're talking about the border or the protective responsibilities of the Secret Service, or killed.
Yeah. And you're talking about Alejandro Mayorkas, just to be clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. The thing that was concerning to me, Chuck, is he comes out without any details and immediately says he has 100% confidence in Kim Cheadle, while everyone else is saying she's got to go, she needs to be investigated, Secret Service cannot pass the buck stops with them. He comes out and it's like him saying the border is secure is equivalent to him saying she's 100% great at her job.
Well, don't forget, Stephen, they like her because she's turned the Secret Service into a woke agency, a kinder, gentler, softer agency with her 30 for 30 program of implementing a quota system of bringing in 30% females by the year 2030. I think the natural answer that we're going to find to the question of whether or not standards have been lowered for her to achieve the goals of her pet project are going to be a resounding yes. I think we saw some actions on Saturday in which the American public asked, what the hell's going on here? Who are some of these people around the former president, and why are they acting this way if they're responsible for protecting him? So she has not only changed the workforce for the worst, not because these are females, but because she's trying to implement a quota system as a forcing mechanism to lower the standards to hire a segment of the population. And this has brought great contention within the United States Secret Service, unnecessarily so, I might add. But it has lowered the standards that I am used to, where you're coming in, you've got agents coming in with significant real life experience before they ever come to the Secret Service, and maturity. And that is missing. You can see it. But look, the video doesn't lie.
Yeah. Okay. I'm reading right now that she is being subpoenaed to come before Congress. Everybody else around her, the Republican side of the House, they are jumping on this. They want answers. When that information comes out, I would love to have you back on the show to help me go through that. Tucker Carlson said in a private interview that he's worried that this is just the first of many assassination attempts on Donald Trump between now and the election. Are those threats going to be taken seriously? Is security around him going to be beefed up going forward? How do we prevent this from happening again?
Yes, the security has to be beefed up, and it was. I think you will see a night and day difference. For example, if you look at the composition of who was protecting former President Trump on Saturday and who escorted him into the RNC on opening night. I mean, the difference is jaw dropping. And now we've got this intelligence about a credible Iranian plot to try and assassinate the former president. You know, I'm sure, back to the border crisis and the book I wrote, I'm sure there's no Iranians that have made it across the southwest border, Stephen, and aren't wandering around in the interior of the United States right now. So that's a whole nother problem. And that goes right back to Ali Mayorkas again.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Of course, Iran is saying we would never go after Donald J. Trump. This is made up. This is defamation. You're slandering our nation in order to, make Trump look good. It wouldn't shock me if there was an attempt. They're mad about General Soleimani being taken out. But, that guy killed many, many men and women in uniform, and Trump made the decision to take him out. So let me jump into one thing here. A lot of people have been wondering, and maybe you can weigh in on this. Kim Cheadle is saying that nobody was on that roof because it's sloped. But meanwhile, the counter, the snipers were on a more slanted roof and took him out from a slanted roof. Is this just like the stupidest excuse you've ever heard?
It's absolute stupidity. Look, you ever hear the story that if somebody is drowning, they would jump on a floating orange peel to save themselves if they thought it would save them? That's what she's doing right now. She's drowning, and she's trying to jump onto anything that can justify the poor decisions that led to this catastrophe. That's what's going on right now. There's no other way to say it. And as you're drowning, you're willing to do anything. And that includes saying some very, very stupid things.
Okay. Dan Bongino is somebody that I've been following as he's given insight into this. He just put something out on Twitter. Dan Bongino says there was supposed to be a tactical team on the roof where Thomas Crook shot from, but they chose to post in a second floor window instead. Bongino accused the Secret Service of bullcrapping and lying to the American people. Bongino suggested the sniper team may have been confused when they initially saw Crooks on the roof because it was supposed to be manned by a tactical team. I know the counter sniper team that were up above Trump, they've been getting a lot of heat because now people are saying, oh, they had them in their glass, they were waiting, or they were told to stand down. But now Bongino is saying, wait a minute, there may have been genuine confusion that you don't want to take out a police officer or an FBI agent who you believe is on a good perch to take out somebody. Do you think there's any truth to what he's saying?
The confusion part, absolutely, which is why, again, remember back to effectively implementing the security plan. That is literally going to that building and saying, we identified this building as a significant threat. I am going to make sure that this is posted adequately and making sure that we are confirming. That also includes that if somebody were supposed to be on the roof, what were they going to be wearing, right? What was their police uniform going to be of the special weapons and tactics team, the SWAT team, the counter sniper team? What are they looking for, and coordinating all that with the counter sniper team? So is there a possibility, again, back to my point, that one overarching significant failure is going to expose a whole bunch of other failures? Absolutely. And at this stage in time, whether it's what Dan is saying or somebody else, I wouldn't rule any of it out.
Yeah. That's been my thinking is, one, I'm trying to be patient, but at the same time, people want answers. Is like, okay, if that is the perfect place to shoot somebody from, then you would assume they would have a man or woman who's a sniper on there. And if I'm the counter sniper, I don't want to be the idiot that kills one of my colleagues or local police or an FBI agent because somebody's up on the roof. And so I think as they go into the communications and learn everything, I do believe that they're going to find that there was confusion on, should I take the shot? Do I have permission to take the shot? Why is somebody up there? If they are up there, they're probably one of our own. That's my thinking anyway.
Yeah. So two things. One, very rarely will a counter sniper team point their weapon in the direction of the protectee. That's
Okay.
that's number one. And then, the second thing here is exactly what the composition was, and this will come to a resourcing question, as Dan would agree, is why wasn't he receiving a full complement of Secret Service resources? In other words, why didn't the Secret Service resources make up the totality of the counter sniper team? Why were there two Secret Service uniform division officers on the counter sniper team supplemented by state and local law enforcement? Why was the counter assault team, why were there two of them supplemented by 4 to 6 of the state and local teams? It doesn't matter that you have equal to or more than what is typically given. It comes down to training and response. And the simple fact of the matter is these police departments, their special operations teams, are not engaged or trained in protective operations as part of their daily routines and responsibilities. That is a problem. And that's where we need to look at the resourcing. The same thing about Secret Service being supplemented by other agencies under DHS during a campaign, as I understand they were for this operation. So now you have agents from Homeland Security Investigations, better known as ICE, right? You have other agencies coming in to help and provide protection to the former president. Why aren't these all Secret Service trained people? And when you have a difference in training, that leads to problems.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a sniper and I'm Secret Service, excuse me, and local police and FBI, and I can just imagine the miscommunication. Is there any possibility that the overwhelm at the border is distracting the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees Secret Service? I mean, so many agents have been pulled off of other areas to go to the border, not to stop the invasion, but to process it faster.
Well, that should be a question. One, has the Secret Service been impacted by the resource demand down at the border? Now, it's a fair question because we know that Mayorkas has directed other agencies to go down and help CBP with the processing aspect of this crisis. The other thing is at the leadership level. Ali Mayorkas has allowed the Department of Homeland Security to be turned into the Department of Border Security and Immigration because he's turned the department into having to manage crisis management each and every day. And so instead of focusing on the proactive nature of the Department of Homeland Security and why it was created to prevent the next 9/11, right? He has turned this into going off the rails and becoming really an entire department, the largest law enforcement department, by the way, in the country, to having to operate in a crisis. And he's not paying much attention to anything else. Let's face it. outside of congressional testimony and lying to the American public about what's going on down at the border and within the country now because of this crisis.
Yeah. So you have been a strong advocate, raising your voice for Alejandro Mayorkas to step down, for Kim Cheadle to step down. Former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker told the Daily Mail this morning that if a sniper team was not put on the warehouse, that she has zero excuses for why the actual sniper team was not instructed to watch that more closely because of its advantageous vantage point on the president. And he is now calling for her to step down. He says, everything you're telling us about this situation rings hollow. It sounds like you agree with what he's saying.
Well, yeah. And look, to have FBI agents coming out and talking about this, other than protecting the attorney general and the FBI director, the FBI is not known as a protective agency. So for that to jump out to somebody like Chris, look, it's also jumping out to the American public. They know when they're being BS'd. And so, this either is going to add up or it isn't. And so, of course, I agree with Chris. And Chris and I have been on different shows together before, and we bring different perspectives to this. But the fact that Chris and I eventually meet at the same point, it may be some different justifications for how we get there, but we still arrive at the same ending, and that is, that building should have been covered, and there's no excuse. Look, if it's 5,000 degrees and you don't want to put somebody on the roof, then you better figure out another way of how to lock down that building and make sure that nobody makes it up to the roof. I mean, you cannot get beat this way. And never mind, you're getting beat by a 20-year-old kid. That's on a suicide mission and was able to plan all of this out. I mean, reported explosives in his car that were parked nearby. That tells you he was thinking about some type of diversionary tactic to maybe blow the car up and draw the attention of people to that while he's carrying out this attack. Look, I can only imagine with this security plan that was in place, what would have happened and whether or not this would have been a successful assassination had that van blown up.
Yeah. Oh gosh. One thing that I wanted to, okay, really quickly, going back to what you said, if they didn't want to put somebody on that roof, at the very least, wouldn't you have said, hey, we're going to put eyeballs on that roof, people that are watching it, making sure there's not a ladder where they can climb up. I mean, just like as simple as, it's almost like when NASA spent $5 million creating a pen that could write upside down, and Russia said, we just send our people to space with a pencil because it's simple. Like if you're not going to put people on the roof, at least put eyeballs on the roof, drones or a human.
Well, that's right. So the use of technology is going to come into place, humans. But look, again, back to the conversation with the police. If for whatever determination we're not putting somebody on the roof, then you've got to have the CS team fully aware, the counter sniper team fully aware that nobody is going to be on that roof. And you're going to tell that local police department, look, what would have cost you one person is now going to cost you four, because I want an officer posted on all four sides of this building to make sure that we don't get beat and somebody climbs the roof. Those conversations, in my experience, in my career, have been had all the time. And you'll get a police department that comes back and says, look, we're unionized. They don't want to go on the roof. It's going to cost me four bodies. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that instead, as long as it gets me away from putting somebody on the roof. But there's a greater conversation. There's a greater point here. And that's the agency as a whole. Does it have what it needs to have to make sure that there's redundancies in place, to include technology, to make sure that they're not getting beat? And then it goes to, the follow through. And that comes through to the experience, to the training, to the resourcing, and all that's going to be looked at here. But as the director of the Secret Service, you can't say, oh yeah, look, the police department, they were responsible for that outer perimeter. We just do the interior. I mean, the other agents I've spoken to, they're like, what the hell is she talking about? We just do the interior. That's never been the case. And if that thinking and that statement is the way that agents now are currently being taught, then that explains the failure, because that explains that somebody just said, oh yeah, local police, hey, yeah, you've got the outer perimeter. It's your job to handle it. Don't worry about it. You just take care of it. That explains a lot. So there's things that, like I said, she's drowning right now. She's trying to survive. And there's things that are being said that just defy common sense when it comes to the way the agency does protection.
Okay. I hate to keep bringing up Dan Bongino, but he threw out on Fox News last night that he worries that she is being told not to speak to the public, not to give details, and said he believes somebody above her is instructing her to be quiet so that you don't embarrass the government. Would that be someone within the FBI? Would that be Alejandro Mayorkas?
It's Mayorkas, and it's the president or the president's team. Look, there's a reason why she was subpoenaed, Stephen. She was subpoenaed because word was out that the secretary was trying to prevent her from testifying on Monday. And so let's be logical here for a second.
Okay.
Would I want her testifying on Monday after the recent, coordinated interviews I've seen her do with ABC and CNN, where she has said these ridiculous things about slanted roofs and protecting buildings from the inside? I mean, would I want her to testify? No, because once this testifying takes place, there's no way this administration is going to be able to continue to protect her. No matter how much Dr. Jill likes her, it won't matter. The American people are not going to tolerate this.
Do you think part of this, I don't want to use the word cover up, although it does, at least
it starts to seem like one, Stephen.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem with this. That's the problem. It leads to conspiracy theories. It leads to just because you're the one that's fermenting this. You're the one that is saying these ridiculous things that people say, wait a minute. Look, if we're talking about another agency, maybe. We're talking about the Secret Service here. You got to be kidding me. There's no way that they really believe this. They're not known to be this incompetent of an agency. So what she starts to do is she starts to make the whole agency lose credibility even further because of this ridiculous way of thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try and articulate this a little bit differently. Could it also be that President Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas, who are her boss, they are trying to also prevent her from making them look bad as he tries to beat Donald Trump in an election? I mean, it looks like the president put incompetent people in charge of protecting his biggest enemy when it comes to keeping the White House. Yeah,
and protecting him too, by the way. Which if I'm him, I'm also paying attention to. I want solid plans and policies and people around me too. But no, look, Ali Mayorkas has proved his incompetence, his willingness to carry the water for this administration, implementing policies which have undercut our entire homeland security apparatus and made the United States a much more dangerous place. The fact that our threat level is off the charts right now in this country, in large part, is because of what he's allowed to enter this country. So that's a full stop. It's also no secret, and you can look at the hiring that's taken place within the White House itself, that this administration is a big fan of DEI. So what better way to get on the side of the president if you're the director of the Secret Service than come up with some brainstorm like this 30 for 30 initiative that I told you about? Now, if that's the focus and if it's the priority, which I've confirmed it is, she's on top of this program to make sure those numbers are reached, then maybe she's not paying attention to the core functions regarding the reason why the Secret Service is involved in protection. So she just has not been focusing on what she needed to focus on. And that was, does the Secret Service have what it needs to do the job effectively?
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up a picture here. 1 second while I try.
Yeah, while you're doing that, you can tell this is extremely frustrating because it's not fair to the men and women of the Secret Service. And you know, while we're talking about women, look, I would, whether you're a man or a woman, and I'll give you a justification here just to show that I'm not focused on the women on the job, because I worked throughout my career with many competent women that went through the same training as me, the same standards as me, whether it was physical fitness or firearms or whatever it is. But if I'm a man or a woman, I don't want to be put and allowed into this position if I'm not capable of fulfilling the responsibility. I'll never forget, I was going through the academy and there was a kid in my academy class, a man, who was from New York City and never had driven a car. As a matter of fact, he got his driver's license because he was required to have it to come into the Secret Service. He did not make it through training. Do you know why? Because he could not successfully drive a car through the standard obstacle courses that we had to take the cars through. Wow. And they failed him out. So look, these should be across the board standards. You either meet the criteria to include the experience prior to coming to the job. There should be no reason why somebody, for example, is being hired to the Secret Service directly from being a barista at a Starbucks.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I wanted to...
And by the way, I'm not making that up.
Oh, that's a real thing?
Oh, okay. So we should not be hearing stories. That is not real life experience. We should not be taking people fresh out of college.
Yeah.
So we got to get back to the basics of making this organization what it needs to be to succeed, not what a person who's in charge of it right now feels that society needs to see and experience. This is not about calendar pictures. This is about real life. And Saturday proved it.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to point out, just one of the things, every single one of the women that were around President Trump, they're significantly shorter than him. I mean, he just towers over the top of them. But I noticed when he walked into the RNC convention, he was surrounded by very, very tall agents. It was obvious that they went, wait a minute, we need someone taller.
So the question is this, Stephen. Was what's been surrounding him previously to Saturday, including on Saturday, was it there because the Secret Service didn't have the ability to put the right people on the detail, or because it looked better? Okay. Right? This gets me to my point of, this is not about a calendar shoot for the Secret Service. These pictures that they love to put up there are, aren't we so great and diverse? No, look, that we will be diverse. There are people out there that are going to meet the standards. When did a quota based on sex become legal, by the way, for hiring within the federal government? Is that because an administration simply says we're for diversity and inclusion and forget the laws? If it comes down to a white or a black male and a white or a black female, we're going to go with the female. When did that become legal? When did it stop for an organization like the Secret Service being about quality and qualifications and experience, including physical capability to do the job? You know, a big part of what the Secret Service does, Stephen, is showing up the way they show up. It's called deterrence. I know this administration has walked away from deterrence. They've walked away from deterrence at the southwest border. They've walked away from deterrence globally with our foreign adversaries. So this makes perfect sense. They have eliminated deterrence because you no longer have figures, people standing between them and the former president or any other protectee, where somebody who might be thinking of doing something bad says, you know what? I was thinking about doing something, but those guys look like they'd rip my head off. So I'm not going to try it today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the two wars we're dealing with. They're looking at Biden going, here's an old, weak man with a poor memory. We can get away with this stuff, right? Same thing. Same thing. You think our enemies didn't watch what happened on Saturday and go, oh, wait a minute. It's like, I don't know if you remember the old 1980s movie Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he finally is able to draw blood on the predator. And he says, if it bleeds, it can die, right? We've now drawn blood from Donald Trump. Now is the time to muscle up and show people he is protected. Don't mess with us. He will likely be the next president. The group has to do better. Final question, Charles, and then or Chuck, and I'll get you out on this. Is a lot of people are now speculating. How did a 20-year-old outsmart police, FBI, Secret Service? Was there other people involved in getting this boy to this position, whether on purpose or not on purpose? Any thoughts on whether he accomplished all of this alone?
I wouldn't say, look, I totally don't agree with this, inside job conspiracy stuff. I think this was the perfect storm of poor planning, poor staffing. This kid was on a one-way trip. He knew it. This was a suicide mission. If he had been encountered the way he should have been encountered, either this doesn't happen because they take him away for questioning, or if it was at the part in time where he was armed, walking around, making his way to that roof, there very simply would have been a shootout right then and there. It would have been a suicide mission. The cops would have had to engage, and he never would have made it to the roof. The reason why, and again, this may be a good thing, the reason why there may have been so many misses of the former president was, I don't think this kid expected to make it to the roof. If you think about it, and if the story of this building having police inside is true, he essentially did the equivalent of breaking into a police precinct during roll call.
Wow.
And so I got to tell you, there may have been a rush aspect to this because he just couldn't believe that he made it up there and knew that once he started shooting, it was going to be over and would be over quick.
Wow. All right. Well, I know a lot is going to come out. I would not want to be Kim Cheadle going in front of Congress. I think we're going to get a lot of answers. I'm grateful the president is alive. Like you say, they need to come out of this stronger and smarter. I believe that they will. I'm going to put a direct link to your book, Terrorists on the Border. It's a fantastic book.
Thank you,
very well researched. I'll put a direct link to that. Also to your X or Twitter account so that people can follow you. And then I hope, sir, that you will be willing to come back on the show. Thank you for your time today. I know how busy you are. I was the one coughing, even though you've done more shows than me. So I apologize about that. But thank you for joining
right.
me this evening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right, Stephen, you too. Thanks for having me.